Hey everybody. Today I'm warning you out of the gate. Probably is going to be a little deep. In fact, it's not probably going to be deep. It absolutely is going to be deep. But that's okay. Because, every now and then you got to like unzip the soul, so they say. And, cheap therapy sometimes comes from weird places.
Yeah.
And frankly more effective. So as you can probably tell, actually, you read your dashboard, so you know kind of what the subject matter is today. You've seen the name of the guest, and I'm coming in here music-wise for those of you that know me and connecting the dots. This is in fact my middle brother who is no longer with us due to the subject matter at hand. So. Song is called Fortune Teller Blues, and there's a story behind that we'll get into here in a little bit. But joining me today, who was initially like, what the fuck you want to talk to me for? Hesitant would be the polite way of putting it, and then given the situation and everything, I think you took a couple weeks, frankly, and kind of stewed on it, and pegged me a little bit later, and were like, you know what, fuck it, let's do it.
Yeah.
Joining today, Mr. Marc St Pierre. How we doing, Marc?
Good. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So, the subject matter is suicide. Yep. Let's just, that's what it is.
Yep.
And humans and those that are left behind, and everything in between, right?
For sure.
I don't even know how to call it. Like your experience with the subject matter, or your relationship to the subject matter, happened to have occurred, taken your life partner, your husband.
Yep.
Just take a second and give me in pardon the pun, a postmortem love letter to Chris.
Yeah.
Here we are. What are we? 65 days past, something like that.
Yeah,
a little bit more.
Basically, yeah. New Year's morning was when it happened.
If you could say something to Chris right now, what would you say to him?
Why? I mean, honestly, that's one of the biggest things. It's still very fresh and still very surreal and very much still feels like yesterday. But at the same time, also feels like years have passed and there's so much is still happening and so much is still unfolding, but you're also still very much coming to terms with the reality of a situation that you never saw, and you're kind of in the process of picking up pieces that you never wanted to, But for him, it's just, if I had to say something to him, I really, it's obviously that I love him and miss him, and I just really wish that he had known all the love that he was being given, not only from myself, but everybody else that really cared about him in his life,
Yeah. It's so funny because, there's, I didn't, because Dana took his life in August of 23. And from that date forward, I never was on the journey or looking to seek out like institutional solutions to the issue at hand. Meaning, I didn't read any books on it. I didn't go read any journals. I didn't seek out conversation. I literally I didn't want to talk to anybody. Was a big part of it.
Yeah.
For you, because obviously much shorter period of time, much fresher. Initially out of the gate, have you noticed maybe like your own personal process or desires?
Yeah, I mean, I find myself doing the exact opposite. I want to talk about it. I want to not only in processing it and sharing shared experiences that I had with Chris and that people have had with Chris, but also learning to educate myself and deal with it in ways that I never even had really given a second thought. I find myself casting a very wide net right now, whether it's individual therapy, group counseling. I've been gifted books by friends on grief that I've taken time to try to start reading because it all just doesn't make sense, and I'm trying to make sense of something that I have no understanding behind,
Let's reverse. Let's go back maybe a little bit so that we can kind of paint a picture here.
Sure.
Chris Peterson.
Yes.
How old was he?
He was 47.
47?
48.
Where'd he grow up?
North Dakota. Good old farm boy in North Dakota.
North Dakota. Now let's get into some of the kind of what I consider really the chaotic enigma portion of his story, of your story, of your gay man.
Yep.
From North Dakota.
Yep.
Doesn't usually track.
Right.
So
I mean, many people of that age in general, no matter where they grew up, doesn't normally track, but especially so in that situation.
He's a bubble. Technically millennial, wannabe Xer.
Yeah.
You know, kind of in no man's land, so to speak. How did you guys meet?
Out here in 09. He had come down here from North Dakota for a previous relationship. I had come out here for work. Actually, I'd asked to go to Denver, and they asked me to come here instead, and I reluctantly said sure. And, you know, I came out here in August of 09. He had already been here a couple years. And mere months later, we randomly met and kind of went from there. You know, given his career of being in law enforcement, you know.
Was he always in law enforcement?
No. He was in law enforcement for close to 18 years, but before that, he did some corporate America stuff and worked for the airport when he first came out here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, question about him then. So he would have roughly around 29, 30, somewhere in there, made the move to want to be a cop?
Yeah, 30.
Why?
I think he always had a very strong desire to protect people. You know, I think it was a result of his childhood growing up, you know, protecting people in his life. And I think he always felt a strong calling to help people. That was always one of the things that he admired about himself and worked really hard to do. And I think getting into that line of work and wanting to have a positive impact on people's lives in that way while helping support people and helping people see a certain profession in a different way as well was something that gravitated him toward it.
So connect the dots for me then. Yeah. North Dakota kid grows up. When did he come out?
Oh gosh, I mean, definitely before me. I mean, I think when he was early college age is when he
was he out of his parents' home at the time.
Yeah.
So you know, the stereotypical story in America is whenever an individual from seemingly deep red / rural / whatever the cliche environment is, when they decide to chase their lifestyle. Cities like San Francisco or Portland or even Austin, you know, those tend to rise to the top. St. Louis isn't exactly, or doesn't appear to be.
Well, it's funny because to him, he had always said, you know, for myself coming from the East Coast and living outside, I mean, an hour-ish outside of Manhattan, you know, that to me is a big city, right? And when I first met him and we would always talk, he said to him, you know, St. Louis to him was a big city. You know, he felt very overwhelmed by the size of it, but also very excited about it and what it had to offer versus what his environment and city growing up or town growing up had. You know, I think he was one of like 10 kids in his whole high school class that graduated. So that was kind of the size of the area that he came from.
Well, and St. Louis also is it has a number of truly eclectic neighborhoods,
for sure,
and those that are gay friendly in particular. Yep. From the Grove, you know, for years and years and years. Yeah. Central West End is not, you know, clearly an opposing neighborhood, and Soulard always has a little bit of weird. So was it easy for you when you came here as well to, you know, because if you're coming from the Northeast, that's a lot different, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was coming from D.C., you know, it was a much different environment, you know what I mean? I had no fear and no concern, and I quickly learned after coming out here that I didn't have that same concern either, you know. And I think it was comforting to my family, and especially my mom. I remember when I had to come out here, she did her own research, and she was comforted by the acceptance that the city offered.
So let me ask a personal question. When did you come out?
I didn't technically come out until probably maybe I was 20, 23, 24, you know, but not on a wider scale. I didn't try to fully come out until a couple years after meeting Chris, really, you know, on a larger scale.
So let's talk about the two of you then you meet here locally. You're working here.
Yeah.
He's entering into the academy, or had already.
No, he had already started by the time he was like a 2-ish years in.
So I
he
got
graduated in 07.
So the first time you guys asked, then I gotta ask, like, because there's certain perceptions as far as in not only cities go,
Yeah.
but industries.
Right.
So when he told you, I'm a cop,
Yeah.
or I want to be a cop, like, what was that conversation like?
So I didn't know his profession until the second time we met, because the first night we had met,
Oh, really?
it was from a distance at a bar, and we just exchanged glances, and he later would tell me that he thought I was mean mugging him, but literally the next week he showed up at
Says the cop.
right, yeah. The next week he showed up at the same bar looking for me, hoping that, because at that time in the Grove there was a trail that everybody followed. You'd go to a bar from certain times, and so he showed up at the same time at the same place, hoping to run into me. So clearly my mean mugging was enticing enough to him to do so. But the time that we had like the first conversations and we were talking through, and he reluctantly told me what he did, and then when he did, I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. I don't know if I
did it bother you? Like, was there some consternation out of the gate?
I just didn't want to deal with it. You know what I mean? Like, I have my own
Yeah.
preconceived thoughts about law enforcement, and I support it, but I also, it wasn't as volatile as it is now with impressions that people have on it. But I knew, I had law enforcement in my family growing up. I know
Yeah.
the toll that it takes on family members, and obviously it's like when you're just meeting somebody, you're not looking for a forever in your first conversations. You know what I mean? Like, you're looking to, I don't know, sometimes even just a one night stand. But, you think, okay, well, this isn't going to be a long-term thing, so it really doesn't matter what you do, But as you start to navigate and grow into a relationship like that, there was a conscious effort to say, okay, like, this is what you're accepting and you're choosing to get involved in, because it's not just like there is a big component of that job that impacts your relationship.
Yeah. So then early in the relationship, he's that North Dakota boy. You guys are living here in St. Louis, discovering that this is actually a fairly safe place from a lifestyle standpoint that you can thrive.
Right.
Describe them early on, like, because it's one thing to get over a mean mug, in a bar, and another thing to, call a guy like me a couple years later and say, hey, we're going to have a reception party.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Can you talk a little bit about that middle gap?
I mean, for me, he was a breath of fresh air in my life. He came in as a Yankee coming in the Midwest. I couldn't care less about meeting new people. I wasn't the say hi to people in the grocery store line. I was like, okay, what do I have to do to get to point A to point B?
Yeah.
And him coming into my life caused a stop and reflect and engage with people and learn about people and take time to get to know people. And that kind of changed a lot of my personality, just being involved with somebody like that, so him coming into my life at a time where I was too new to a city, didn't know anybody, trying to find my footing, having somebody like that so soon after I got here as a security blanket of sorts was beneficial for me.
How did the work life / work wives reality play into your guys' everyday? Because for obvious reasons, he's a cop in a traditionally machismo environment. Especially at a time in which the temperatures are rising everywhere, right?
Yeah, I think that's more of the current state than the initial state. When we first started dating 16 years ago, it was a totally different world. I never the pressures and the stress and the weight that it had on him was nothing like it ended up becoming. It was almost like, he was a cop, but it didn't consume his whole life at that moment. And he had a great partner who was his best friend, and they really enjoyed their work together, and they did a good job, and he was supported, and it was a joy to do. It was community outreach, and it was helping people, and it was gratifying, and obviously I think you could really have started to see the shift during all the the stuff in Ferguson and the riots that came after that, there was a at least in my perspective, again, I'm just an outsider here. I don't live and breathe the work, but you know,
Sure.
You can notice that.
Well, but you can speak to it because I mean, you lived with it.
Yeah, true. But I can speak to one side of it, you know, his side of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I can speak to how it made me feel, but I mean, there was a change drastically in the joy for it after everything with Ferguson and everything that has subsequently come since then.
Did he predominantly have men or women as partners?
It fluctuated. I would say equal, to tell you the truth. There was no more one than the other. If I had to guess, I would say probably women more than men.
Good or bad? Do you think that was, for him?
For him, I think that, you know, I will say when he first got on, and again, like I came in 2 years after he was already on board, but, you know, he would tell the story quite frequently that, you know, he did have concern for himself as a gay man, just the societal thoughts that you have of, hey, like if I have to rely on these people to be my brothers or sisters or to help if shit goes down, like will they be there for me, or will they allow, you know, maybe some preconceived prejudice to mask the ability to step in and help me out. And it's sad that he ever had to think that. And I know that he's not the only one that of that in that community that works that line of work that thinks that, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, the same could be said for a woman too, maybe, you know what I mean? Does she
totally.
fear? You know, it's like it's not just specific to him being gay, but it was something because he lived that was important to him.
Yeah, it's just that shit fascinates me because I do, as much as I don't read, fiction, nonfiction, or anything really in mass. I read a ton of news, and I try to like read social trends through just kind of signs and images. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I've been thinking about Chris a lot since, you know, he did what he did, and you know, root cause. Root cause is a term that like I apply to almost anything I do, whether it's a debate online, whether it's looking at my own issues within a house, financially or otherwise, et cetera. Yeah. I always like to find root cause, and so thinking about hearing you say that there was a point in which things changed, and then you fast forward to New Year's Day of this year.
Yeah.
You know, do you consider, maybe you can't define it, but do you think that time frame is kind of a character of, or a part of the root cause?
I think it's a slow drip, you know, of the root cause. I mean, I think blaming any one thing for something so severe and so traumatic, I think is maybe short-sighted. I think a lot of things have to be looked at to why things happen, but I also think that at the same time, you know, so many people are quick to define his last action as his legacy, and I think if people are so quick to define that, then they have to be willing to look at why. Then, you know, if they're going to be angry and they're going to judge him for what he did on that, then you have to kind of look under the hood as to what caused that then.
So with my brother, historically, when I think back to his character or his actions / mannerisms, he was at times incredibly hyperactive. Because there was three of us. He was the middle, and we had, I don't know, 12 boys that were all on our block, and every single day we were outside playing, right? He would be the one that would snap in the middle of a wiffle ball game and chase a kid up the tree with the bat, or, you know, we'd be playing basketball and miss a shot and punt the ball 3 houses down, and, you know, just he would have moments where he would, brain would go mad, and hyperactive kid.
Yeah.
And fast forwarding to the event, like part of me wanted that to be the simplistic. It was just in him, right?
Yeah.
And I know there's a ton of other factors and thoughts, etc.
Right.
Chris seemed to me, the few times I'd been around you guys, more of the opposite of
100%. That wasn't
more gentle giant, more quiet, more North Dakotan, right?
Yeah.
Am I right? Wrong?
Yeah, those outbursts are 100% not something that were a part of him. And funny enough, as like me and the way that I grew up and how, my family, we yell it out and then we're fine with each other. It's
Sure.
like you wanted that sometimes from him to be like, hey, yell, like tell me, it's fine. Like then we can move on. And that just wasn't part of him, and I don't even know if he just wasn't an angry, mean person,
Mm-hmm.
and so being that he was always so even keel from that perspective, even in the low moments or the high moments, it was never one of any kind of drama or spiraling or kind of anything visceral or visual that you could see to say, oh yeah, no, he's having a moment, we need to fix it type thing.
So I personally, I have a ton of like human empathy for policemen in general.
Yeah.
You were talking about earlier, kind of the optics of supporting it. You don't support all the policies, but you support them in general.
Yeah.
Totally makes sense. I'm in the exact same camp. I know a lot of individuals that are currently cops, were cops, or want to be cops, and I like them. I like the vast majority of them. I too have issues with policies, different policies, but I'm of the mindset that, especially in urban environments or violent environments, period, I think they should be paid more. I think they should be given more time off. I think they should have more services, benefits, everything else, because nobody should or can realistically do a job like that and every single day go to sites and addresses and scenes in which they are seeing the worst in human nature.
Yeah.
Every single day.
Right.
And then be asked to be normal.
Yeah.
Did you see that in Chris?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I mean, he was good at.
Well, I'm asking because if you were the guy that wanted to like, hey, let's fight this out. You knew this was happening in real time.
Yeah.
From his job perspective, how did that go? Does that make sense?
No. Say.
How did that relationship between you and him, where like he's going out on calls and seeing the worst, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What was that like?
Well, it's twofold. It's the
tilt that up a little bit if you don't mind.
The person that you love, seeing them needing support and wanting to protect them, from something that I couldn't protect him from, and in my way, knowing the way to protect him is to help comfort him in whatever he needed to in that moment, whether it was to talk for 2 hours at night over the dinner table about something that he saw that day, or whether it was just sitting near each other, him being quiet. That was it. But also realizing that you are going to see the worst in other people every day, and the fact that you have to live with that as somebody who only wants to see the best in people, it's kind of it's a tough thing to deal with every day. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Was there a particular act or thing that would trigger him more?
I think when it was innocence being lost, seeing dead children,
women, kids.
Yeah. The kids are what hit really hard for him, just because, again, it's life taken away from somebody that never had a chance and had no say in the matter and weren't even old enough yet to make their own decisions. And the fact that you see things like that with regularity is tough. Even hearing it, I tried to give him a safe space to talk through it, and even having to hear it was no picnic, so I couldn't imagine having to see it, not only from him, but everybody that he works with every day, where you have to normalize that and figure out how to compartmentalize it in order to get through the next day. And it's like, you could see, a rape in the morning, a murder in the afternoon, and by the time you're at lunch, you're on your third dead body or something. It's like, how is that normal?
Yeah.
How do you process that all that happened in mere hours, and then get up and do the same fucking thing the next day, potentially, you know? I mean, at a certain time, that even the hardest of person, it would weigh on.
Well, and St. Louis was the epicenter for the ultimate battle between police and the community. Post Michael Brown with Ferguson riots, everything else, the Black Lives Matter movement, and defund the police.
Yeah.
How was Chris during that time?
Challenged, I think. Again, he straddled two different sides that he felt strongly about certain things on both sides, and I don't want to speak for him, but you're operating in a profession.
Well, he doesn't get a vote anymore.
Right.
That's
yeah.
my saying.
Oh, yeah.
Like when people talk about my brother, I'm like, well, I'm like, he doesn't.
Newsflash: I seldom gave him a vote in most things.
Oh, there you go.
So it's not uncommon.
Oh, good. Ditto.
I gave him like 3 votes of what I wanted, and he got to pick which one. So he got a vote, but it was one of mine. Yeah. But no, I mean, so often you're stuck in the middle of two sides. You know what I mean? And it's you're either you're either doing a disservice to a career, or you're doing a disservice to your personal beliefs as like a liberal gay man, and trying to, like I said, straddle both and find a happy medium, in profession and in personal life with relationships with friends, family, things of that nature. It was that constant navigating and adapting.
I mean, because I can't imagine, like, there are rings of stress is what I would call it, without even knowing what he was going through.
Yeah.
The inner ring would have been his fraternal brotherhood, in quotes there, with his work peers. Yeah. There's the familial brotherhood with you, his spouse. And then there's extended, within the gay community, the vast majority. Look, we all know this to be true. The gay community in general is going to be far left. It's going to be liberal. It's going to be more liberal than most.
They should. You're surprised at how many people aren't, which is crazy to me.
On average, yeah, I agree. I know those that are.
It's like, how can you?
Yeah, no, I have a few friends that are further right than I can earthly imagine. It doesn't. Yeah, I'm like, but you would not. Yeah, well, let's not go there. So there's that. The social community that he was in, work community, home, social community, neighborhoods, friends, and then extended family that's from afar. Was he consistent throughout all of those rings, or, was he kind of doppelganging himself in the environment as it presented itself?
No, he was very consistent in his thoughts and how he presented his thoughts, and I think it did come with backlash sometimes, but I also think, and I think that would bother him as a people pleaser who he didn't want anybody ever mad at him or to disagree with him in some way, shape, or form. But he always took it upon he always took the opportunity anytime he had it to take the time to try and educate somebody on his side of a story that they may not be privy to, because so often people grab the headline or grab, what they get from the news without knowing the behind the scenes of it all. And he always was able to speak from a perspective that others wouldn't know. And he would try to take that opportunity to educate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy to me. Like there's a book somewhere in there.
Right.
Like
his life could be a book.
Well, that's sure. And it's funny because I say that because like part of my process, I have been writing. Like, and part of the reason I do it is because, one, it does take my brain away from the self-loathing part of going through something like this.
Yeah.
Because you're busy, you're working, you're typing, you're trying to get your nouns and pronouns and everything right. But then more importantly for me, what I've realized in hindsight in this process, I'm fact-checking myself, determining what events were real. What events did I embellish? But more importantly...
About your brother?
Yes.
Okay.
But more importantly, what were my real feelings?
Yeah. Because... In what led up to it or what happened that day?
All of it.
Okay.
Because it's hard to separate the two.
Yeah, okay.
Because in Dana's case, there also... Well, we'll get into this. There was no note, right?
Ditto.
So therefore, his life, in one way or another... was the note. And trying to figure that out has been kind of like my own personal challenge. Yeah. I'm not beating myself up over it. I'm not self-loathing. I do tend to talk about it because that is, in a way, because I knew that he had such a large group that cared.
Yeah.
His musician friends, his girlfriends, neighbors, etc. Like he was a very endearing individual.
But he had struggles, right? Or nothing to that point.
No, he was he was an asshole.
Yeah,
He was a
right.
starving artist. Like,
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, his struggles were himself.
Right.
And I can say that, the older brother. So I think about Chris, and again, just from the outside looking in, this kid from the plains has to come out later in life, moves to a city that is a questionable city for most people. To when they look at St. Louis, they assume we're all Missouri, right? It's like, no, it's different. And then meeting you and being a cop and knowing within the ranks, not everybody feels the same way.
No, I mean, I will say, like, he actually, there was a life before me. I want to make sure that that's clear. It's like there was a life in North Dakota where he was well loved by friends, most family, and then coming here prior to me, he had a good community.
So he had a solid network.
Yeah, he had a solid network. I mean, with his ex and friends that they had, and he was well loved every step of. He was well loved by people that he brought into his life every step of the way. I mean, not necessarily by people he would have liked to have been, but he found his family everywhere that he went.
As I mentioned before, I wanted to kind of shift it up. I think we've painted, or at least put enough paint on the canvas so people can kind of see, a little bit of the story / background a little bit. And I have to assume, because I think about it a lot, if somebody is listening to this and they're like, okay, rural kid has to come out later, is gay in a city like St. Louis, and then he becomes a cop, and cops aren't usually friendly in that for that ilk, and I'm just spreading this out because I know people are thinking it, because there's a certain amount of why with any suicide. And even the ones that are super obvious, we were not joking about it, but talking about an institution. If there's a financial institution, which has happened, when things go bad in the market, there are people that take their lives because of what they see coming across the ticker. Horrifically, infamously, they jump from tall windows in big cities. But that's a why, right? So I want to kind of get into, maybe projecting or speculating a little bit, because if anybody has the right to, you and I have the right to, in regards to each of our situations, to speculate, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you that. Start there. You've had time. Why? Why do you think he did what he did? And this is a short, it's a 5-story building and a quick elevator ride, because we'll get into it.
Yeah.
But if you had to guess, why?
I think the reality of his life became too overwhelming, and he had no other out than in that moment, because he had the ability, he had the access to an easy out. He took it.
When you say reality of his life, frame that.
The reality that he was overworked and stressed out and feeling like he was being watched with everything that he did, and knowing that he was handcuffed by the fact that he was almost 18 years into a career that required him to get to 20 to get a pension to make it worth his while, feeling the stress of leading up to that he had no other choice, reconciling with the fact that, a mere 10 days before he passed away, he told me that he didn't think he could do the job anymore because it was too stressful on him. I think it was a combination of all that led to it.
So when you think back and you go to that 10-day prior conversation, reset button.
Yeah.
Do you change your tone in that conversation?
No, because I mean, again, knowing who Chris was and knowing the fact that he wasn't this long-term sufferer of depression or experiencing suicidal ideations, that wasn't something that consumed him. He started to kind of go downhill around November, just from a standpoint of a shift in his mindset that was not a normal way of thinking.
Was there physical manifestations? Maybe more tired, eat less, eat more, drink more?
No. Tired, lost a lot of weight, was foggy brained, very tough. And from my side, it wasn't uncommon to see him in different permutations of this at home, because I know that he had a hard day and he was on all day and had to be everything for everyone. And he got home, he just needed a break. Right. So, it wasn't uncommon that would happen from time to time. This felt different because it felt more, what he needed was more than what he had needed before. And it manifested into my head of thinking, well, how are you functioning at work if you can't even function if you can't even tell me your name at home?
Did you could he point out, or did you notice him acknowledging little wins, arresting somebody or locking somebody up or protecting a particular kid? Were there any I know you had a bad day, but you did this, and this well?
No. If anything, and that was kind of one of the catalysts of noticing the changes, that there was no acknowledgement of the little wins.
Did he acknowledge wins prior?
Yes. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. This is let me ask the question: legal recreational drugs or alcohol present at all in lifestyle?
No.
Casual drinker, nothing.
No, I mean very lightly casual, by meaning like 1 or 2 a month if we're going out to dinner. It just wasn't something that
wasn't his thing.
No.
What was his thing?
Music, dancing, laughing, TikTok.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
TikTok. I blame TikTok.
He
problem solved. Episode over.
TikTok, Snapchat. I mean, he was on it like a 12-year-old girl. You know what I mean? Like really? that was his livelihood. And that was his escape. And that's what I knew that. That's how he navigated the very harsh realities of his life, was that escape.
So why do you think it was different for him? Because there's a lot of cliches when it comes to police officers in generically speaking. When you hear the stories or the individuals that are struggling there, that see the things that we talked about earlier, they tend to, again, stereotypically, drink a lot. They're going out with the guys, or they're kind of disassociating through that.
Well, that's the thing, and he was always adamant in saying that, like, he didn't want to be a stereotype. A statistic in that nature, and that was not only like, I don't want to be a divorced cop. I don't want to be an alcoholic. I don't want to be a wife beater or a spouse beater. Like all these things that traditionally you can look at other people and see. He fought so hard to not be that, and it was always something in his mind that he was cognizant of.
Were you guys good?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, 16 years of a relationship, who doesn't have ups and downs, right? But no, we had a great life together. It's like we were each other's best friends. 2 income best friends. You guys traveled a lot.
Yeah,
we traveled a whole lot. That was because we worked such different shifts, and Chris with his schedule, especially, when he was on nights and afternoons, there would be weeks where we wouldn't see each other sometimes. We'd be ships that passed in the night, and the reason why we did travel so much, not only having the privilege and affordability to do that, but the fact that it's like we wanted those joint experiences together. It allowed us to reconnect and remember why we love each other.
So in hindsight, whenever you have shift work spouse like that, do you wonder if there might have been a different outcome if he would have been a 9-to-5er?
No. I mean, a 9-to-5er, not a cop?
Correct. Oh no, you guys would be home every evening. You would have kind of the same cycles.
Yeah, I mean,
because if it was really good when you were on cycle, off cycle theoretically is whenever he would not be around and you wouldn't see each other, quote, for weeks.
No, but I think you needed that. I think for both of us and the type of people that we are, it's like having that independence was great. Yeah. Like you didn't become codependent on each other, and as like fucked up as it sounds, like having that independent nature of our relationship has made the loss of him a little bit easier because we didn't live a codependent life where I couldn't do anything without him, you know. Not that that's not that that's like a consolation prize, but it does help in that perspective of like, I've had so much in my life that you had to kind of be single through certain things because of his work schedule.
Has family pressed on that? You know, because I have to assume, because you have extended family on both sides,
right?
To a degree.
Yeah.
Were there questions along that line? Because they're all everybody's looking for an answer. They want a why.
Yeah.
Right.
A question as to why he.
How are you guys? How was?
Oh yeah. Oh God, let me tell you. So the thing that there was a family member that the first time they called me, and again, you know, they're experiencing their own grief. You know, the first thing out of their mouth was like, "What happened? Did you guys have a fight that morning?" And I was like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" I'm like, we're mere hours after me finding out that my husband killed himself, and the first question out of your mouth is, "Did you have a fight?" I'm like, "No," you know. But why even like, it's like I can think people are trying to grasp at straws to understand a very abnormal action, especially for somebody that showed no indications of having that action. So it had to have been somebody else's fault that they did. Why? Like, it had to be some other reason that Chris did what he did, because Chris wasn't capable of doing that himself, you know? And I think that's what makes it such a tough discussion and a tough rationalization to have, because it's like there was this happened and it was not something that was ever a thought in anybody's mind that could happen, and it did. And now you're trying to grasp at straws for a reason why, you know? And in light of no note, like Dana, you know, you don't have anything. You try and piece together whatever picture you can that helps you understand something that you can't understand.
Do you believe Chris was mentally ill?
I think that he didn't do things that he could have done to help himself be as good as he wanted to tell himself he was. You know?
Yeah, no.
I think that has a couple different layers, JB. I think it's like, not only does that take a fair amount of self-accountability to be vulnerable with somebody that you don't know, whether it be a therapist or somebody, and tell them like your deepest secrets that you can't even maybe tell yourself, but also acknowledge imperfect things in your life, imperfect family dynamics that you don't want to acknowledge, realizing how childhood and environmental things kind of establish and make you the adult that you are, no matter how much you try and run away from it. And that it's a collection of a lot of different things that you can't blame. And sometimes you have to take accountability for yourself.
I was, you know, somewhat projecting that last question to the mentally ill question, because
Did you think that of Dana?
No, I don't think he was at all.
So then how do you justify it?
I think sometimes humans can be incredibly impulsive, and they can stack up their thoughts, feelings, fears in a way in which they can convince themselves of anything. Yeah. And I don't consider that a mental illness. I think that's human nature. I think that, like, comparing and contrasting a little bit here, you know, because it sounds like Chris's story is more that his action was almost a runaway kind of he wanted to leave something, you know, this accumulation of stress from work and, you know, however that was playing out in his head and his heart, right? It affected him. You saw it, you know, the weight loss, and he even said it 10 days earlier, you know, I don't know if I can do this job. Yeah. Then he does what he does. With my brother, there were reverse triggers. I think he was running to something he thought or he wanted and or missed, because, you know our story. Both parents pass away in 14 to cancer back to back. Yeah. Year earlier, my youngest brother dies of a heart attack at the age of 44. There was 5 of us. He wasn't married. He had no kids. He didn't even have a pet fish, right? Yeah. So now all of these people are gone, except for me, and this is this whole other chapter in my book. Might even be 2. It feels like to me in hindsight, like his crazy was more of a I miss them, because my mom and dad were both brothers, those two were the babies. They were taken care of, and they were, they were always the ones like, Dana, you do what you love, and I'd be like, you're a starving artist, ass, get a job and write songs.
Right.
So it's just a different thing. And when you think back in time, was Chris running away or running to?
If it was black and white and you were asking one of those two,
Yeah, if you had binary choice, would you say?
Running away.
Yeah.
He had nothing to run to. You know what I mean? Like everything that he valued was in his day-to-day life. Mm-hmm. And I think everything that he valued, he felt things, he felt less control over things, and again, I don't know if you can pick him out of that situation and put him somewhere else, and maybe if he didn't have his uniform on and didn't have his gun right in his pocket that morning, maybe it wouldn't have happened, or maybe it would have happened a week later. I don't know.
New Year's Day, correct?
New Year's morning, yeah.
New Year's morning,
yeah.
You guys walk me through the morning. You told me a little bit, but
yeah. So I mean, I just a couple days before, to kind of to lay the foundation, so you're aware of the fact that it was something abnormal. We had again, he had told me about the wanting to, not being able to think he could do the job anymore. That was as we were driving up to Lambert to go home, to fly home to Connecticut for Christmas. And we had a really off Christmas. My family was really concerned. They noticed a difference in him. They were very concerned about his just disconnection of his persons, so much so that we cut our trip home early. We came back to St. Louis early because I was like, hey, let's just have a couple of days to relax, catch up. Let's chat through, what you had said to me. Like, let's just refresh, and during that time, the day that we got back, I was out running errands while he slept all day pretty much. And I had reached out to his two best friends and I said, hey, can you get together with Chris? Like, he's going through some stuff, mm-hmm. We have a monthly get together of all of us and our spouses, and we were slated to meet up in a couple weeks. And I said, hey, maybe just you three, maybe not the spouses, so you all can talk together. And then it went from, actually, let's fast track this. Like, can we have a get together in a couple days? So we had scheduled something for that Sunday after New Year's Day, and the Monday before.
Did he know? Did he know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so group chat, group talk.
Yes, basically.
Okay,
yeah. I was chatting with them, and then they were chatting separately with him, and I was on the peripheral trying to coordinate everything to make sure. So the couple days before, the Monday before, he had said to me, he was home, and he said, hey, can we just watch something fun? Can we just watch something happy? And I said, yeah, like, what do you want to watch? And he said, can we watch Sister Act? I said, sure, let's watch Sister Act. That was one of his favorite movies. So we...
I'm not going to say that's cliche, but that's a little cliche. Did you follow it with, oh my God, Friends or something?
Oh, yeah.
Binge it?
But we watched it, and I watched him watching it, JB, and the whole time he just stared at the TV, no reaction.
He wasn't paying attention.
Well, he was watching it, but out of body, and after it was done, I said to him, I said, Chris, I was like, what is wrong? I'm like, I'm worried about you. I'm worried about me. I'm worried about us. Like, there's guns in the house. I'm like, are you okay? And he said to me, no, I'm not, but like, I don't know who can help me. And I said, okay.
What day was this?
That was Monday.
The Monday before Thursday.
Yeah. And I said, okay. I said, well, that's fine. Like, you have your lunch Sunday with your two friends. And I said, listen, I can't take this last step for you. Like, this step you have to be willing to do. And I know it feels like it's a mile away, but you have me and a lot of other people who love and care about you, and we'll mm-hmm. figure it out. Like, it's important, whatever's going to come. It's like, nothing is too heavy that we can't figure out, and then I had gotten up. He was on the sofa. I was on the rocker next to it. I got up and I went in front of him and I said, "Here, come here, stand up." And I gave him a hug. And we hugged for maybe 2-3 minutes tops, but I could just feel like the weight of him on me. And he just said to me, he's like, "I just need more of this." And I said, what do you mean? Like, what is this? Like, mm-hmm. Affection, love, support, like conversation, what, you know what I mean? And he couldn't really articulate what he meant by that.
Yeah.
And so knowing that he just had a couple days to work before he was meeting up with his friends, and it was his long weekend. He went to work New Year's Eve like normal. He was on days, so which means that he was like 7 to 3, but he had gotten home late, and we were just joking about the day, and went up to bed, and we were laying in bed, and he was just laughing about how, like, tomorrow's gonna be a shit show, waking up with all of the property damage from the guns or fireworks on New Year's Eve, right, in St. Louis.
Yeah.
And New Year's morning came, and he got up, and it was normally around like 6-ish is when he would leave the bedroom, and he would close the door behind him. So I'm not up that early usually. And he gave me a kiss on my shoulder, and looked me in the eyes and said, love you, happy New Year, see you later, and left. And did his routine. You know what I mean? Like he left the house, full uniform, with his jacket on, with his backpack. He made his coffee, his iced latte that morning, and went out to his car. He had a take-home car that was parked on the road, and sat in it, threw his bag in the back, turned it on, put his belt on, warmed up the car, and drove forward. Literally drove forward 20 yards along the side of our house. Like, drove forward, stopped, and 20 seconds later took his life. And that was around, I think, like 6:37. The crazy thing is, 14 seconds later, my neighbor next door, who's a nurse, came home and crossed paths, and was just like, it wasn't uncommon for them to see each other in the morning because of their schedules. And sometimes she would say it just looked like he was looking down on his phone, like he's done so many other times. But the crazy thing I think about, it's like, well, if she was 10 seconds earlier, like, would that car coming down the street
just
have
a brain
startled
trigger?
Him? Yeah, right. Yeah. But then all the other stuff, it's like, so
did she get out? Did she see that the car, because if the car was rolling, where did the car?
It wasn't rolling. He was stopped at the corner.
Oh, okay.
It was stopped. So it just looked like he was on his phone or whatever have you.
So she just proceeded as normal.
Yeah. Which was fine. Like, I wouldn't have done anything different, I don't think, And it's funny, I'd gotten up, and it was like 8:15 or like 8:10 or something like that. And I remember I sent him a text message, and I said, morning, babe, happy New Year. Hope your day is better. Hope you have a good day. Something along those lines. And it's crazy to me to think about it. Like, in that moment, I had sent that text message, and mere 10 yards away on the other side of a brick wall, he was sitting there dead for an hour and a half already, 2 hours, I mean, the fact that he was out there for 2 hours.
You saved your text messages?
Yeah.
So who found him?
One of my neighbors, I say neighbor, but she's also a friend. It's like one of my neighbors. Yeah. And so it's interesting to talk about that. So so I'd gotten up, and I'd made my breakfast. I had made my coffee, and I looked out the window, and I noticed that a car was out there, and I was like, oh, that's weird. What? But it wasn't uncommon for two things. One, because cops knew that a cop lived there. There's oftentimes cops will park out in front of the house to write reports or do whatever, because they know that it's a safe space. And then other times, sometimes Chris would forget something, and he would come home and have to run into the house, but sometimes he'd be on a phone or something. So it didn't startle me that his car was out there, right? And almost simultaneously, as I saw the cop car out there, my doorbell rang, and I opened it up, and my neighbor was like, Mark, Chris is hurt. And I was like, what? Okay. And so I ran out to the car, and I turned the corner, and I was like, Chris. And I got up to the car window, and I looked inside, and I was like, oh shit. Okay. This is happening. You know what I mean? So it's like, you see somebody, especially.
Well, I got to interrupt, because you telling the story mere 2 months later, this is fucking with your head. There's no way it's not. So how are you telling this story right? I'll get back to that.
Yeah.
How are you able to tell the story in a casual narrative way? What have you been doing to keep yourself sane to do that? Or are you?
Well, so the thing is, I will say, I think that there is, I don't want to speak for all kind of first responder spouses, but there is always an inherent thought that every day
could happen.
Chris. So the fact that it happened, it was like, okay, it happened. The worst nightmare that I always thought about every fucking day happened. It didn't happen the way that my dream always was. That phone call, that knock on the door wasn't, oh, your husband killed himself. It was, oh, something happened, but but the end result was always still the same, right? So the fact that the fact that it happened, it was just like, okay, it was bound to happen, so it did. You know, that I've lived that way for the last 16 years because that's just how my brain works.
Outside of 911,
Yeah.
who'd you call first?
One of our good friends and one of his coworker friends who's a lieutenant, I called her.
What was that conversation like?
Well, I didn't realize at the time she was actually on the road making a prisoner run, so she wasn't even local at that moment. But I had just, I told her, I said, hey, I don't know exactly what I said, something along the lines of, hey, Chris passed away this morning, and the cops yet hadn't showed up. I mean, this is all like the cops showed up in like 2 minutes. It was incredible how quickly they showed up. So a lot of stuff happened in those few moments, and then the reality of it was like, okay, well, how I was very concerned about like trying to maintain Chris's dignity, being like, can we get a blanket up or can we get some kind of coverage? It being New Year's Day, I'm glad the streets were quiet.
Nobody was out. Yeah.
Right. But again, it's crazy to me when you think about it that like he was out there almost 2 hours without, like, that's just insane to me. You know what I mean? Like people not following up or people not seeing him. It's so insane.
Well, there's things that happen, right? To where there will always be this anecdotal reality of you
Right.
that day and this experience.
Yeah.
For example, I have to assume now you do not have a neighbor that when they see you, they don't think that's Mark. His husband killed himself right there.
It's not just the neighbor; it's everybody in my life.
You know what I'm saying? Like you now are kind of a moment in time that you had.
Well, and it's funny you say that specific to my neighbor. I carry a lot of guilt in general as the person that's left behind with Chris's decision that he made, and the person that has to see how it's impacted everybody. I'm carrying all of that concern and that responsibility because I see
survivor's guilt,
how it impact. Well, I see how it's impacting everybody. You know what I mean? And I see that people are responding to it in different ways that I can't help. But as it relates to this specific individual, it's funny. I was having this conversation literally the other day, and I was thinking, and I've yet to talk to her about it, and I'm looking forward to the time when I can, because it's like you don't want to re-traumatize each other by having these conversations. But I think about it, it's like the way my brain works. I feel like I am only in the place that I am right now because I was the one that made that call, and I was the one that saw him in that way, and I was the one that kind of, I don't want to say controlled that narrative because it sounds possessive, but it's like I was the one that started everything. You know what I mean? But I'm acknowledging the fact that like I only have that experience because somebody who I care about also has had a really traumatic experience that they now have to work through that they never asked for.
Right.
But I think about if I'd woken up that morning and there were 50 cars out in front of my house, or if somebody gave me a call and said, "Oh, Chris took his life in an abandoned parking lot," you know what I mean? I have so many questions with that.
Well, your brain would rush because that's what my brain did. You start to imagine and paint scenarios.
Yeah.
And so for me, I had to go to the house immediately once I got that phone call.
Yeah.
Because you're seeking out answers. You want to know why. You want to prove that it's not fake.
Well, and we kind of overlapped that morning a little, or that day too. It's like, I'm not a part of your story at all, but you remember, it's like you had called me that day because you weren't next of kin, so you didn't have any. You were struggling to get information, so you called me to ask to talk to Chris.
Well, that was for Ryan.
Oh God, that wasn't for Dana?
Yeah, see, that's how fucked up my story is.
I thought
because Dana was
because
we had got a phone call from fire or EMT that went through to the next family member. Dana got the call. He's freaking out because he was that hyperactive kid.
Yeah.
And he just got a call from the city, didn't know it was city of St. Louis. And he was MIA, he being Ryan. So checking with the girlfriend and checking with everything else.
I called. Okay. I thought that was Dana.
So I'm like, hold on. Okay, look, I know roughly where he was. Let's assume something happened. Let's say car wreck or whatever. We're not thinking worst case.
Right.
I'm like, I know people in the city of St. Louis. Let me start through some cops. So I reached out to you, to Chris, and I called another friend, Pat, and Pat was the one that was like, okay, and I'll never forget this. He said, does your brother drive blah, 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 Jetta? And I knew. I fucking knew right then that's what it was.
Yeah.
So then I had to get Dana in the car to tell him, right? So similar situation for all three of these situations. One was a heart attack. The other two weren't. But the scene, imagining what did they look like? Yeah. Like you saw.
Yeah.
Like in both cases for me, I didn't even, I knew. I didn't have to go to the coroner and say, show me the body.
Right.
Right? Right. So there's still these things in my head that are like the images need to be backfilled.
Yeah. Yeah. And see, and that's why it's like, it comes at a cost, but I saw how I saw what he looked like. You know what I mean? I saw his face. I saw the way the gun was cradled in his hands. I saw the fact that JB, like the state that he must have been in, like the car was still in drive. His foot was on the brake. He didn't even park the car in those 20 seconds before he took his life. Like he rolled forward with his foot still on the brake with the car in drive, did what he did, you know? Mm-hmm. But because I have no note, I can see all that and I can piece it together to a satisfactory enough in my brain thought about what potentially could have happened. But at the same time, it's like, while I'm thankful I have that, you know, for me right now, looking at somebody who was so beautiful and so amazing and that smile and seeing a picture of him and right now quickly watching it devolve into the last vision that I had of him is something that is my biggest struggle right now as it relates to the person, the visual aspect of him, you know? Mm-hmm. So having to take down pictures in the house, you know, is something that I've had to do because there were just reminders everywhere of that last image that you have of him, you know? And
do you feel guilty about that when you do start to remove pictures or trinkets or maybe things that you bought on a trip or...
Yeah, but what is my choice? What's my option here? It's like if you want to have any... Listen, I didn't make this decision. I have to live with it. I'm 44 years old. I have hopefully a lot of life left in me. You know what I mean? I want to carry on his legacy and he'll always be a part of me. But at the same time, I have to do what I need to protect myself and my health right now. And if that means having to remove some things that just mere months ago gave me so much joy to see, then I do that to protect myself. Nothing gets thrown away. They get put away for a minute, and then, you know, we reanalyze it eventually. You know, I mean, some of the first conversations that people had with me are like, you have to move, right? Like you can't stay there, you know. And I can remember, especially immediately after, I couldn't walk outside and take the dogs out to go to the bathroom without looking at that corner and be like, oh yeah. Like, I mean, days later, I had to go out and sweep the rest of the glass off the road. You know, I couldn't see the glass sitting there any longer, you know, and I will say it's softened a lot over the last couple months. Thankfully, I don't look at that corner with dread anymore. I mean, I still have my moments, you know, I'll still lay in bed and I'll think about, oh yeah, if I like tilt my head back far enough and look to the left, like look out that window, that's that heavy presence sitting over me. But I know that Chris cared a lot about people. I know he cared a lot about me. I know that he tried his best to never do anything that would hurt me. And I know that it probably bothers him how much his decision has caused so many people pain. And I'm trying to do what I have to do to work through that.
That is the only area, you know, I stated earlier that I firmly believe Dana wasn't mentally ill.
Yeah.
But I do believe there's a mental disassociation.
Yeah.
When an individual does what they do, because it's the ultimate form of selfishness.
Yeah.
Because the pain from the act itself, it's manifested in the people around them.
100%. Listen, nobody looks at me anymore, and it's not a reminder that somebody that they're hurt or that somebody that they cared about is gone. You know, and I have to carry that for who knows how long, you know what I mean? Like, what does that do to relationships in my life where people stop wanting to be associated with you because you're just a constant reminder of how sad they are about somebody no longer being here.
Yeah, I think about that because it's my life with Dana. The Venn diagram was heavily overlapped.
Yeah.
And some people just will never get over it.
Yeah.
For different reasons.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it might bother some of them. And I've never had this conversation, but I can read the tea leaves a little bit. There's a certain amount of wonder as far as like, oh, how are you okay? How can you talk about this? And it's like, I'm not going to allow him to drive my narrative.
Yeah.
And when I stopped through, because I was driving back, oh my God, I was driving back from Nashville, and you had the visitation or the memorial at Kudus.
The wake, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Came through, and I remember telling you, briefly, because I didn't know what kind of state of mind you'd be in, and I immediately was like, okay, this fucker, he's kind of ready for this. He might melt down later, but he seems good.
Yeah.
He's running the room here. And I, talked about it, and you said, I've been thinking about you because of this.
Yeah.
And I told you kind of the piece, the story from my conversation with the coroner whenever I went up to Effingham, and that was, she made a point to tell me that in her experience and extensive experience in dealing with suicides, that through the research and through the conversations and the interviews, that the majority of the time, individuals that do it, that take on the act, they don't do it when they're at the bottom. They don't do it when they're depressed. They don't do it when they're sad or afraid, et cetera, because the human body is protects itself, at times like that. They typically do it when they're strong.
Yeah.
And, and I remember you kind of looking at me, and you immediately were like, a little bit of a head nod, like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Because you described the day of as he woke up good.
Yeah.
Kiss on the shoulder. I'm going to go make my coffee. I'm going to put on my blues.
Yeah.
Good day. Felt good, right?
Right.
For all intent and purposes.
Yeah.
And then they do what they did.
Yeah.
Do you think about it that way anymore?
No.
You don't think about it.
I don't think about it anymore because it's like there's nothing I could do to beat a dead horse. Like I can't overanalyze anything that I know I'm never gonna.
What about third parties? There's family, there's friends, there's ex-workers, there's things like that. At this point now, a couple months later, what are those conversations like? Because they shift.
Yeah.
What's your experience been in talking about it?
Yeah. I first of all, I don't know where I would be without the support system that I have in my life. I think, anybody that has to go through something like this alone or without, people that are looking out for them I just don't know how you do it. I was very adamant after things happened that I didn't want to be overwhelmed by people wanting to be in my life so much. And I was appreciative of that, but I wanted to kind of keep the same cadence that I had with friends. It's like, oh, if I saw you once a week, I'll see you next weekend.
How did you differentiate between, because this is what was hard for me. How did you differentiate between empathy and pity?
I think it's more of just how I treat my relationships with people and how I think about them and what they're telling me. I mean, the people that mean the most to me, I know that it's coming from a place of goodness, and I think that they're trying to fumble their way through something that they don't know how to navigate as well, and they want to be whatever they can for me. I don't think, you asking that question, I don't think that I've felt pity from anybody. Because I don't want to be pitied. Yeah,
I think part of the reason why I feel pity is because I tend to be more bitter.
Yeah.
And so therefore, what is probably good intentions, I convert into, I don't want your pity.
Listen, I'll tell you.
Because for me, I don't want to talk about it half the time.
Yeah.
Like you want to talk about the new music? Fine.
Right.
You want to talk about, fishing trip? Fine.
Yeah.
There's no answer. There's no note.
Yeah.
Right.
For me, I had a lot of anger initially, less at Chris and more about people that felt the need to grab something, like grab hold of a trauma or a tragedy for their own benefit that wasn't theirs to hold on to,
1000%.
And the fact that like we live in a society where mere moments after I finally had an empty house after that morning, I was already on the timer to get a hold of all the people that I needed to that mattered. And it was already on social media that something happened. And I'm like, how the fuck do I have these conversations that I want to with siblings, parents, where you're already getting hit up from people online being like, oh my God, I saw something cryptid. It's like, it's so fucked up.
That happened to me both times.
Like you took the narrative away from me. You took my ability to tell the people that really matter something important and horrible about a son, a brother, a friend, and you made it into clickbait.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the disgusting part. And I think going through that side of it, just kind of the public facing side of it.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't until a good 24 hours later, because I already knew. Yeah. I was getting blown up.
Yeah.
This isn't real. Can't be real. JB, call me, I'm like, fuck. So then I told a quick story, I do what I did.
Right.
Or I did what I do. Yeah, right. And part of me wanted to be like, look, it's true. Fuck off. Yeah. I wanted it to be literally.
Did you have a lot of, one of the grossest things to me is that so many people would message me and be like, oh my God, what happened? What did he do? And it's like, how about I'm sorry for your loss, or, I'm here, I'm thinking of you. Like, you really think that the first thing out of your mouth that's acceptable is what happened? Like, you're entitled to know that first and foremost.
Yeah. And and the question, how did they do it?
Right.
Like,
does it make it any better? Like, what does that do for you to know that?
Do you really want to know this?
Right.
Do you really?
You're asking for nefarious reasons.
And, and then the questions come in like, oh, was he on drugs and everything else? And it's like,
yeah.
Listen here, fucking Clouseau.
Right.
This event has wrecked my world, my kids' world, and you're worried about how it happened?
Because it's sensational to them. It's not anything that means anything.
Humans are, for the most part, I think, have fairly decent intentions, but can quite often be scum.
Yeah.
That's my recap after all this.
Right. No, but I think to the original like pity empathy thing, it's like I'm more in my head than anything. I think about that. I find myself, in conversations or when I go out with people and I go out with friends, there is a giant hole missing in these get-togethers for me, and for them. And so, I find myself having dinners and having.
Do you feel a little bit like a novelty, like a weird novelty when you circle back into your groups? Because nobody looks at you the same.
Yeah, no.
They will never look at you the same.
I feel more like a charity case than a novelty. I almost feel like, okay, well, are people dancing around me? Do they not want to talk about their bad day because they don't want to stress me out? Or are they looking at me being like, oh, I just have to be nice to him because he's going through this horrible thing? And then I'm looking at them thinking, oh, well, are they only hanging out with me because they feel bad for me? Or are they sad because Chris isn't here anymore? And what's that going to do, to their relationship with me going forward? It fucks with your head for sure.
What would you do differently?
In what? That situation?
You go back in time. See, that it's an open-ended question on purpose because because there's stages in which this occurred.
Yeah. I myself try to live life in a way that I don't have regrets, and I don't know if that question has a fair answer, because I wouldn't do anything different, because anything that I would do differently would change the course of my life. And I think about, I was never to be out here. You know what I mean? I was supposed to graduate college and go back up to Manhattan and live in New York. I stayed in DC. That got me to St. Louis. That got me to, there's all these things that got me to where I was, that one different change could have changed something dramatically. And sure, I would love to have him back in a heartbeat. Like, it's devastating to not have him here, but I don't get that choice. There's nothing I can do to change that. So I'm left with, okay, what happens? How do we move forward here?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I look backwards, and it's been so long at this point that I agree with you. I I've come to the conclusion that I wouldn't do anything different
Yeah.
previous.
Yeah.
Sure, would I, maybe a few more phone calls or maybe a few more happy hours or whatever, but that's not being honest with myself, because my life is my life, his was his, and when we were together later in life, it got a little bit easier because we were growing through the same pain.
Yeah.
So I don't know what I would have changed. The second part of the question, though, and I want to get, that I'm going to ask you is, what do you do different now? Because when you do go through something like that, things change.
Oh yeah, you're forever changed. Like, I'm not the person that I was 2 months ago. I don't have my same facilities right now as I do 2 months ago. You are forever changed, and you are forever now a statistic of something that you never wanted to be a part of. It's like a friend of mine gave me a book that I've been reading, or that I read, about grief, that was very interesting in how they stated. It's like you will never be who you were. There's no moving on from this. This will always be a part of you. You just have to learn to start moving with. And framing it that way is a very interesting way to think about it. And it's how I'm trying to think about it. It's like, yeah, you have relapses to where it's like, oh, the coulda, shoulda, wouldas, knowing that that's not going to change anything. Or, oh, if I just push through this, if I fast track this grief, if I get rid of all the stuff, if I do everything on my list, it'll all be over and done with. But the fact of the matter is that, for me anyway, I don't think I can even begin to fully grieve it and process it in the way that I need to while all of the to-dos hang over your head. There's so much stuff occupying my time right now that exhausts me, that keeps you busy from the reality of the situation. And I know my reality of the situation, and it comes and goes in waves for sure. But there is no agenda with how to move forward beyond just allowing yourself to ride the wave,
Yeah. So I want to kind of wrap up with one particular area here, because there are a couple things that you've mentioned, words that you've used in kind of describing things that you've done.
Yeah.
Legacy.
Yeah.
You talk about removing pictures, that are reminders. So you talk about some of these little things that you are doing and or have done to kind of move forward, because, when anybody goes through a loss like this, there's this huge pit, right?
100%.
That is behind you.
Yeah.
And I've told people, like, part of my process is every single day I try to find a way to put more dirt back in that hole, right? And whatever that is, whether it's filling it with new memories, or going back in time and being honest with myself about previous memories, childhood or teen years or whatever, so that good stuff starts to cover up the reality of that moment, right?
Yeah.
And in my world, with Dana in particular, what probably makes it the hardest, or did make it the hardest initially, was he was a musician. Because he made music, and specifically he was the songwriter and he was the singer. Listening to it, he's still alive.
Yeah.
You hear the voice and it's like, fuck.
Yeah.
This can't be real, right? So going through it, I've leaned into that. We're releasing more of the music. There was a new album that was literally, he had just left the studio like a week, 2 weeks prior, getting worked and putting posts out there. Hey, new music coming soon, new music coming soon. Well, he did what he did. Well, now new music's coming soon. Me and friends that were close to him, we're going to finish it, right? So for me, I'm going to make his legacy kind of that.
Yeah.
I'm going to make the art who he is, so that my goal is, at some point, I want people to be like, oh my God, I did not know that he did that.
Yeah.
Right? That's my goal. But I've had a lot of time to think about that.
Right.
You haven't.
Correct.
When you think of Chris, what is his legacy, and what do you want it to look like moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the full picture of what his legacy will be yet. I think that he touched so many people, and they have their own internal legacy with him. I find myself now being forced into potentially some type of spokesperson role for something that I never asked to be, whether it's the suicide component, whether it's the leadership with the police department, failing him department. There's all these people with stories out there that they want to tell that they're afraid to tell. And I'm hoping that this starts a conversation and a realization again to say, hey, like, especially in his profession, knowing that, he was I think the fifth person in 5 years that works in that environment that's committed suicide, and nobody is talking about that ad nauseum, and they should be, because it's a very real problem that has to be addressed. And, I'm only one person from the outside of it, but I think that the most important thing, as somebody who loved to help people like Chris did, having this horrible action result in helping someone, whether it's through this conversation, through listening to the eulogies from the funeral, from, what's left to come, I think, as this story continues to evolve, being able to help at least one person is how he continues his legacy.
Yeah, because there's a stigma around suicide in so much that most people think that it's an individual that is being weak. And as I pointed out earlier, the reality is they are incredibly strong at that moment to do something that finite.
Yeah.
So to tell that story is tough.
Yeah.
Well, you're doing a pretty good job of it.
Yeah, thanks.
Welcome to the
Day by
club.
day. Yeah, right. Can I get back my membership?
Oh my God! I'm like, is there? I should make patches like Boy Scout. Like, and I do. You know what? And frankly, I do mean to be flip about this. I do want people to understand that this is not a sacred cow.
Yeah.
It should not be treated as such.
Right.
People should be able to talk about this and be like, fuck that.
Yeah.
This is on them.
Yeah.
I am not going to take responsibility of not doing something that I didn't know even existed.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that if more people that are close to this, that have experienced it through family or otherwise, like, don't feel sad.
Yeah. No, and I'm hoping that in this way, this is a conversation starter on a lot of different things. I know specific to people and how they react to me, they're still worried about the way to react, like the way to talk with me, or they're trying to treat me with kid gloves that I don't need to be treated with, and I want people to feel comfortable talking as much or as little with it. And hopefully, this helps from their perspective, listening to say, okay, like I can have hard conversations with him and he's okay with it. But then also too, people listening that I don't know, or people that only knew Chris or maybe don't know any of us, the fact that, yeah, any of us could be available to talk, or, you have avenues to talk about something that people are afraid to talk about because it's important that you do.
Is there, I didn't see it. I'm assuming you didn't. Is there any kind of like a fund or charity or donation, or are you avoiding that at this point?
No, I mean, when during his wake and funeral, I had asked in lieu of flowers to donate to Backstoppers, or to donate to Special Olympics, because he really was heavily involved in Special Olympics with torch runs and polar plunges, and that like really fed his soul,
Well, I tell you what we'll do. For those of you that are listening that you made it this far, if you do want to be part of it, make a donation to Special Olympics in
Special Olympics of Missouri.
And I will make sure to have Chris's full name spelled out there so you can do it in honor of him. Yeah. Mark, thanks for joining me, man.
Thanks for having me, JB. I appreciate it.
No problem. And here's what I'm going to do in honor of my brother. I don't want money. He doesn't want money. Just go to Spotify and listen. And here's what I'm going to do. I told you at the beginning of the outset here that, or at the onset, whatever the word is. It's been a minute here. We've been talking for a while. That I started a song called Fortune Teller's Blues. I did not have a note given to me, but there was a strategically placed verse from this song that was with my brother's stuff, that was out of place with everything else. I can't prove it definitively, but I know he was a punk, and I have a feeling that was his shot at me. So I would encourage everybody to listen to the song. Pay attention to the people around you. The simplest way to kind of get to the core is just ask questions, be present, act like you care. Doesn't mean you're going to stop anybody from doing something they absolutely want to do, or. But
I think that's important. I think so often we say, "I wish people would have told me," but I think the onus is on us if we're seeing something that we have to take acknowledgement that those people that are in that moment, they don't have the ability to ask for help in the way that you're expecting them to.
Correct.
You need to be the friend, the spouse, the lover, whatever, to recognize and
stay in front of them.
Yes.
Remind them of all the things that they are not looking at that time.
Correct.
Dana Michael Anderson, Fortune Teller Blues, is going to be played to roll us out of here. Song in full. Feel free to go to Spotify, follow him. Like I said, Special Olympics of Missouri link will be in the show notes. Marc St Pierre, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
That's a pretty fancy name, by the way.
Yeah.
Is that a Northeastern thing?
For a non-fancy guy.
There you go. Until next time.
Thanks.
Well, the fortune teller shuddered at the lines on my hands. Said, I can't tell you anything, son, you wouldn't understand. Well, I begged and I pleaded, hear the words that she won't tell. Well, I'd never be an old man, am I headed straight for hell? Maybe you could lie and tell me everything's alright. Well, I'll be rich, settle down, have 3 kids and a wife. But that look on your face is saying I ain't got a prayer. But since I don't believe in fortune tellers, guess that I don't care. Well, a wreck is how you find me, and every day and since that day my friends all try to tell me everything will be okay. But I'm as nervous as a soldier who's waiting on the eve of a battle on a field he knows that he won't ever leave. And I'm looking over my shoulder every day, trying to find the words that she won't ever see. And that look on her face is saying I ain't got a prayer, since I don't believe in fortune tellers, guess that I don't care. Well, I lock my doors staying at night. I won't drive and I won't fly. I quit drinking, I quit smoking too. I did everything that I thought I should do. I even bought a gun and left the bullets at the store. And now I don't want to live here anymore. Well, maybe you could lie and tell me everything's alright. That I'll be rich, settle down, have 3 kids and a wife. But that look on your face is saying I ain't got a prayer, since I don't believe in fortune tellers, guess that I don't care. I don't care. And I don't care.